Hi everyone, Nick Kretikos of Nick's Seasonal Decor, and today we're going to be working with these beautiful white Phalaenopsis orchids, and I'm going to be teaching you how to turn this into this. So stick around while we show you step by step how to create your own beautiful orchid arrangement. So the first thing you're going to need is a container of your choice. So we're dealing with white. I really love white Phalaenopsis orchids, so I kind of wanted a container that doesn't take away from the orchids. So whenever you're choosing your container, you want your container to be obviously beautiful, but you don't want it to be the main focus of your design. So this one is just actually a crate that we picked up at TJ Maxx. It was $9.99, and they had so many different styles and colors to choose from. And also, don't forget, Phalaenopsis orchids come in so many different colors. So if there's a color you're looking for, chances are pretty high that they have it available. So, typically you're going to want to line your entire container with foam. However, this design is not going to be for sale in my shop. It's just going to be a design for my own home, which means we can kind of bend the rules and break the rules a little bit. So all I have is just 2 bricks of dry Sahara foam. You are going to want to make sure that your foam is for artificial flowers or dry flowers, because if you use fresh oasis or fresh floral foam, it will actually absorb the water, and that's a big no-no, you guys. You definitely want it to repel water, especially if you're placing this somewhere where it can, get some moisture. And also, this foam holds up much better over time as opposed to fresh floral foam. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place those 2 pieces. I'm not even going to secure them because chances are I'll probably get bored of this design in a few years and I'll want to change it anyway and use the container for something else. So like I said, with your own home, you can kind of bend the rules. As long as nobody's really going to mess around with it, it'll stay put. So the next thing we're going to need to do is line our container with some moss to make it look a little bit fancier, and that way you don't see any of the foam. So it's going to get a little loud for a few minutes, but we have some of this Spanish moss. This is a preserved 1-pound bag of green moss, and I've already used quite a bit of it. So you can pick this up from a company called Nude Nielsen, or any local store should carry moss. But what we're going to do is just kind of fill the container up. That way we don't see any of our foam, and it kind of bulks it up because our foam doesn't go all the way to the surface. So the beauty with the foam is that we can actually use this over and over again. So once I'm sick of this design and I want to change it up or do something else with it, I can just take my moss right out and use it elsewhere. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to plunk that whole bit of moss inside, and we can start designing through this. So we're not wasting anything. Of course, this is, kind of an excess of moss, but I do have lots of moss. And like I said, we're going to probably disassemble this at some later point. So now that our container is nice and filled, we have our foam inside underneath all of this moss. What we can do now is start working in our foliage and our flowers. So here we have some of our Phalaenopsis orchid foliage, and being an avid gardener and a florist, I always like using the particular foliage that goes with the flower. So for instance, if we used rose, I like to use rose foliage with it. So this foliage is definitely signature, and for those of you that may have fresh orchids in your home, a plant, you'll definitely recognize this foliage and kind of the growth pattern. So this is what the foliage looks like. It's very beautiful. It's very kind of thick and succulent-like, but this came from Hobby Lobby. It was $6.99, 50% off, and I have 3 of them. And even though we have more than 3 flowers, sometimes orchids bloom on multiple stems within one plant. So I don't want to add too much foliage. I want to keep it nice and simple, but definitely use some of the kind of corresponding foliage. So what we'll do is we'll just snip our stems short. We're not going to need a lengthy stem because, we're not putting any height to this design. We're going to keep the foliage nice and tight. We can remove our tag at this point as well. And what we can do is just place it in. So since I'm going to disassemble this in the future, I'm not going to be adding any hot glue. The stems will stay put, and we're not going to have to worry about them shifting around since there's foam underneath this. So although we're not adding any height, since we're not gluing it in, we do want to make sure that the stem goes almost to the bottom. That way it doesn't really shift around too much. So there's our first Phalaenopsis plant. And I also like these because these leaves also come with the aerial roots that you'll often see growing out of the pots. So I really like that because it adds another realistic touch to your design. So we'll just take our second and place it here. Like so. So now we have 2. We're going to place our third and final leaf. Okay, so here's our third and final plant, which we'll just tuck in the front. like so. And then what you can do is just bend the leaves to shape, make it look as natural and realistic as possible. The nice thing about working with orchids is that they have such incredibly realistic flowers within the artificial industry, so you can easily kind of simulate that fresh look. And unless you're a florist or you design with flowers a lot, it's kind of really hard to tell that they're artificial, which is great because these will last a lifetime. So up next we have these beautiful Phalaenopsis blooms, which match beautifully with the foliage. So like I said, I like white. However, you can use whatever color you would like. Orchids come in so many different colors that it's pretty much up to you. So these are just white stems that came from Michael's. So Phalaenopsis typically have the tendency of cascading, and often when purchasing a fresh plant, they usually come with a bamboo skewer or a piece of wire kind of to manipulate the stems down. So I like that look. I don't like them to be upright like a cymbidium, so I am going to bend these, but since they're artificial, we can bend them very easily, and we honestly don't have to stake them up, so you don't have to add any wires or any bamboo skewers. Unless you like that look, you could add some curly willow to add some height into your design, but it's totally your call. So let's work in 3 of these stems. So let's take our first stem and place it kind of somewhat close to the foliage. I like it to mimic nature as much as possible. And in real life, Phalaenopsis orchids do grow off of the foliage at the base. So I like that look. We have 5 stems total that we can work in if we would like, but let's place our second. So we're going to take our next Phalaenopsis stem and place it on the opposing side. Right there, and look at how beautiful that's looking already. So for the next stem, I don't want it to be nearly as tall, so I'm just going to trim it a couple inches off, not too much. That way they're staggered in height, because nothing looks better and nothing grows naturally perfect, so I always like to kind of layer. We can take our next orchid and place it in. Like so. So now we have 3 beautiful orchids. So we have a total of 5 stems. We've worked in 3 so far, and we're going to work in 2 more. However, with these 2, I do want them to be slightly shorter. So we're going to actually cut off more than we did with our third stem. We're going to cut off about 5 to 6 inches off of each. So now that we have much shorter stems, we can begin working those 2 stems in. We can also bend it to shape at this point, or we can do all of the fluffing and adjusting afterwards. I'm going to reverse our container now. With something like this, you do want it to be beautiful from all points of view. I think this would work great as a table centerpiece because you easily can see through it and over it. But we're going to take our other stem and place it kind of mirrored image. So the shorter stem that we just added was more towards the right on the front. Now we're going to take this and place it towards the left on the back. Like so. So now what we can do is begin adjusting our flowers. So Phalaenopsis orchids kind of grow really nicely. All of the flowers seem to face in the same direction, and they're all kind of on these bracts on the top of the stem. So we're just going to fluff those so that they're not facing upside down. And you can easily just do that by manipulating them and shifting them around. So there you go, you guys. We just created a very beautiful Phalaenopsis orchid basket that would look great anywhere. If you use white, this can go in any room, but if you're trying to match it to the color of your walls or your paintings or your couches, orchids come in all sorts of colors. So I did forget to remove the tag. I have a tendency of doing that, so we'll just snip off that TJ Maxx tag and take it out now because I did forget, but you definitely don't want to leave any tags in any of your designs or else it just looks tacky. So here we have our beautiful orchid arrangement. As I said earlier, to spruce this up even more so, what you can always do is come back in with some curly willow, some bamboo skewers. You can come back in with additional flowers, additional foliages like ferns. You could actually add some rocks into the basket to make it look a little bit more natural. But in my case, I love orchids all on their own with just their beautiful foliage. So I don't think we need anything for this design. So to recap, we didn't hot glue anything in. Of course, if you wanted to, you absolutely can hot glue things in. But we'll probably disassemble this at some point and work with these orchids elsewhere because I always like constantly changing up my designs. So all we used was 2 bricks of floral foam. You can get those from Walmart. We used a container that was $10 from TJ Maxx. We used 5 orchid stems that came from Michael's, and we used 3 sets of the foliage that came from Hobby Lobby. So here's the finished product, you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something new, and definitely give floral arrangements a shot. They are so much fun to work with. This is so simple to create. I mean, you guys, we got it from TJ Maxx and Michael's, and you can pretty much do a one-stop shop if you go to Walmart or stores like that. So very, very simple. If you guys don't mind hitting that like button and that share button, I would greatly appreciate it. We have all social media handles under Nick's Seasonal Decor, from Instagram to Facebook to YouTube. So definitely be sure to hit that follow button and that subscribe button, depending on where you're watching this. We post content each and every day throughout the day on all of our social media, and we are live on Facebook each and every night between 7:30 and 9 p.m. Eastern. So thank you all again. I hope you're all having a wonderful new year, and I'll catch you on the next tutorial. Bye, everyone.